Hello everybody, this is Mr. McNair, and this is 7.3, factoring x squared plus bx plus c. Alright, let's go right into it. Example 1, factor x squared plus 7x plus 12. Now when you're factoring this, and remember factoring is the opposite of distributing or foiling. When you're factoring this, there's some steps that you can go through. Alright, so steps to factor when a equals 1. First thing that you're going to do is find out a, b, and c. Now, here, we're dealing with a quadratic equation or a quadratic expression. In a quadratic expression, a is always going to be the coefficient on the x squared. And what is the coefficient on the x squared? Well, it's a 1. The number in front of that is 1. So a is 1 here. B is always going to be the coefficient on the x. So here b is 7. And c is always going to be the constant. And here the constant is positive 12. Okay? Now, before we go any further, let me just kind of divert from the steps for a second. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, that you get a expression such as x squared plus 5, and I tell you to find a, b, and c. Now, you have to be careful with this. Here, once again, a is the number in front of x squared. It's the coefficient on the x squared. So the coefficient here, again, is 1. So the coefficient is 1. B is the coefficient on the x. And what is that? It's 0 because there is no x. Okay? So B is 0 on this one, and C is the constant, and the constant we have here is positive 5. So the constant would be 5. Alright? So make sure that you're just careful when you are finding your A, B, and C. Alright, let's go back into our steps. Step 2, find two numbers that multiply to give C, and at the same time add to give B. Okay, they have to multiply to get C, and at the same time add to give B. All right, so we need to multiply to get 12 and add to give 7. What are those two numbers? Well, if you don't know, you could take their 12. This is what I suggest people do if they don't know the two numbers right off the top of their head. All right, take your number 12, your C, and write out the things that multiply to give you that. For 12 is 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Okay, these are all the numbers that multiply together to give you 12. But only one of those sets works to add to give you 7. Well, let's see. 1 plus 12 is 13. That didn't work. 2 plus 6 is 8. That didn't work. 3 plus 4, that's 7. That's the one that works. Okay? So, after you have that, you're going to go to step 3. You're going to plug in to x plus the first factor times x plus the second factor. So, all that'll look like is x plus 3 times x plus 4. All right? And there you go. You factored this. Alright, now a common question that I normally get about 5 times per class period whenever I'm teaching factoring is, does the order matter? Could I have taken this x plus 4 and instead of having it on the back end, put it on the front end? Yes, it does not matter. When you're multiplying, order doesn't matter. That's called the commutative property. Alright, so it could be either x plus 4 times x plus 3 or x plus 3 times x plus 4. It doesn't matter. Alright. Now, one way that you could check this, and let me stress this point, this right here is the answer to your factoring question. This is the answer. This is it. That's the answer. But you could check your answer by, once again, foiling it. Okay? So if you wanted to check this and make sure that you're right, you could say, okay, well, x times x, whoops, let's do that again. X times x, that's x squared. X times 4, that's 4x. 3 times x, that's 3x. 3 times 4, that's 12. Combine your like terms, you get x squared plus 7x plus 12, which is the original problem. So we know that our answer is right. That was our answer. This was just a check here. Okay? Cool, let's move on. Let's factor these. Part A. A equals 1, B equals 4, C equals 3. So once again, we want to find two numbers that multiply to give C and at the same time add to give B. So let's list the things that multiply to 3. 1 and 3, And that's it. All right. Now, luckily, 1 times 3 is 3, and 1 plus 3 is the 4 that we need. Okay. So we're going to write that out as the factor x plus 1 times x plus 3. All right. Cool. Let's move on to the next one. B. A again is 1, like it will in equal in all the problems in this section. B is 10, and C is 24. All right, so we need to find two numbers that multiply to give you 24 and at the same time add to give you 10. All right, the numbers that multiply to 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. Now, out of those, which of those add together to give you 10? Well, this is 25, this is 14, this is 11, this is 10. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. So x plus 4 times x plus 6. Okay, and once again, order doesn't matter. You could have put the 4 in either one of those positions and the 6 in the other. All right, let's go on to other problems. This one deals with negatives. Here, a equals 1 again. B equals what? Negative 10, right? C equals 16. All right, now let's think before we do this problem. Here we want two numbers that multiply to give you 16, but at the same time add to give you negative 10. Now, what has to be true about two numbers that multiply to be positive, but add to be negative? They have to both be negative. Remember, when you get a positive number, when you multiply something together and get a positive, the two numbers that you multiply either have to both be positive or both be negative. So we know that these, because they have to add to a negative, have to both be negative. So let's list the things that multiply to get 16. All right, things such as negative 1 and negative 16, negative 2 and negative 8, negative 4 and negative 4. Now, out of these, which of them adds together to give you negative 10? Well, negative 2 and negative 8. So our answer, x minus 2 times x minus 8. And there you go. Let's move on. Example 4. Here, a equals 1, b equals negative 4, c equals negative 24. Now again, let's think before we do this problem. Here, we have to multiply together to get a negative number and add together to get a negative number. I don't know why I wrote down negative 4 in that problem right there. All right, that should be negative 5. All right. All right, so we need to multiply to give you negative 24 and add together to give you negative 5. Okay, so for something to multiply to be a negative, you know that one number has to be positive and the other one has to be negative. That's the only way that two numbers can multiply together to be negative. So let's list the things that multiply to give you negative 24. Negative 1 and positive 24, positive 1 and negative 24, negative 2 and positive 12, 2 and negative 12, 3, negative 3 and positive 8, positive 3 and negative 8. I'll put over here negative 4 and positive 6, and positive 4 and negative 6. All right, those are the things that multiply together to give you negative 24. Now, out of those, which of those adds together to give you negative 5? Well, the first one, they add together to give you positive 23, and then negative 23. Then this, next we have a positive 10 and a negative 10. Then here we have a positive 5 and a negative 5. Okay? So 3 and negative 8 work. So x plus 3 times x minus 8. All right. And once again, you can go through and actually FOIL this and make sure that you get the original problem. Okay? That would be a wise thing to do. All right. Let's go to the next one. Here, a equals 1, b equals positive 7, and c equals negative 18. All right, once again, we're multiplying to get a negative, so that means the two numbers, one of them has to be positive and the other one has to be negative. So let's list the things that multiply to give you negative 18, such as 1 and negative 18, negative 1 and positive 18, 2 and negative 9, negative 2 and positive 9. All right, there's also 3 and negative 6, negative 3, and positive 6. Somebody just knocked on my door, so you'll just have to excuse that. All right, now out of these, which of them adds together to give you positive 7? All right, so here, the first one that adds together to give you negative 17, then we get positive 17. Next, we get a negative 7, and then we get a positive 7. All right, so the answer, x minus 2 times x plus 9. Now, once again, you don't have to write out this if you don't need it. I only write it out just in case you don't know what the two numbers are that multiply to give you that. Okay? So, that was our lesson. Hopefully this has been helpful to you, and have a great day.